Hi, welcome back to the AI Assisted Organization podcast with Implement AI. With myself, Piers Linney, co-host is Alok Shukla. We're the co-founders of Implement AI. So we're got a quite an interesting few topics to talk about this week. Some are quite sort of a bit esoteric, but they were actually really important. And there was a fantastic video by a guy called Emad Mustique. Is it Mustique or is it Mustique,
Mustak,
Alok? How do you
yeah.
pronounce it? Mustak. And he's the like a co-founder of Stability AI. So he's a very interesting guy in terms of his view on the world, the view on AI, the view on how AI should be open source. So we're going to cover that as well, and we're going to go through a bit of news, a few updates, how AI is being used, and then we're going to go on to really and go through about how you scale humans as well, because I wrote an article on LinkedIn about this. So there's quite a few to get through. Let's get on with it. So one of the pieces of news, Alok. So I'm back. Where are you now? Actually, I'm back in. I'm back in
I'm in
London. You're
Lisbon.
back
I'm
in
flying
Lisbon.
into London tomorrow.
Right, yeah, I've got back from Italy, which is quite interesting. Beautiful place. And I've been catching up. So some of the news is this ongoing battle that we're going to see. This is why we're going to see a lot of, we're going to see AI evolve because there's so much money now and there's so much focus on it, chasing it. And one of the points that came out of the video of Imad is that there are now more developers in AI than there are in blockchain. And the chap called Demis Hassabis, I think you pronounce his name, and he was the one of the co-founders of DeepMind, which was acquired by Google. So these are the guys that solve protein folding. There's a great video documentary called about AlphaGo. So they're the ones that built an AI that beat the best human player of Go in the world. If you haven't never heard of Go, it's a much more complicated game than chess. So Demis is saying, so he's kind of Google really, if you think about it, and he's saying that their next, he called it an algorithm, but their next model or platform, whatever you want to call it, is going to outperform OpenAI, ChatGPT, for example. And what he's saying is that they're going to combine a lot, sort of transformer model, the GPT LLM, with this kind of iterative problem-solving AI they've got, which allow them to solve things like protein folding. So he's a bit vague on what that actually means, what that's going to look like, but the battle's definitely on.
100%. Like you can't count Google out. Like they've tuned all of their forces and everything onto this. And as you saw in the AlphaGo documentary, I mean, at the beginning, it was almost unimaginable for a computer system to beat, one of the world's ranked top players in Go, but they did quite consistently. And I think in that video, what was quite interesting is there were some moves that were done by the Go system, by the AlphaGo system, which no human would play. And they said it was almost like an alien was playing Go. So I'm really excited and interested to see how their new model evolves and what that's going to lay out for, LLM agents, basically.
And they've got models where I've seen where they're kind of teaching an AI to walk. So they don't really give it much information about it. They give it the basic dynamics and basic physics, I suppose. And it's got two legs. And it just sort of bumbles around and tumbles around. And eventually, it learns to walk. So this is the point about allowing these models to actually self-learn. And that's when it gets quite interesting because then you're going to see this exponential generation of improvement over time and then exponential change. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Google come out with. I mean, there's no idea when. They're keen to rolling these things out quite slowly. Google have just rolled out, I think it's in Google Sheets. I think it's a closed beta. The ability now to talk to their version of Excel, if you don't use Google, to talk to a spreadsheet using a prompt essentially to set things up, analyze data, pivot data. So it's coming into their. Well, we'll come on to this a bit later on. It's coming into their kind of productivity stack. But if we sort of start combining large language models with these iterative models that literally learn on the go, pardon the pun, um, we're going to see some amazing solutions.
No, 100%, because like they've got like the whole point they did with those systems is they almost give it the points for like what a win looks like and what a lose looks like, and then it figures itself out how to win the games. That is with so many different computer games, and like we're going to touch on later on, it's the beginning of the ecosystem wars, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, which brings me neatly onto ecosystem. So what we're going to see is that you're now seeing that App Store and mobile phones. There's two really, but in AI, there's going to be a huge battle for the App Store, the platform. Now you're seeing things like Amazon. That's the way they seem to be going. They've got Bedrock, but also they're sort of developing an app store for AI as well, or and models, large language models. They're not all going to be proprietary. A lot of them are open source, like and all things like Hugging Face, for example. And then also you've got sort of Google. You've got the Google ecosystem as well. You've got the Microsoft ecosystem. I think Microsoft 365, when they launched Copilot, which is the having a sort of a chat GPT built into their productivity platform, their productivity suite. And Google's going to have Duet, which will be a similar competitive thing. And that's what the ability to, talk to a spreadsheet is already. So you're going to see those begin to roll out. You've got things like Unity and gaming. So that's a sort of a gaming platform, and they want to roll out an app store as well. So you're going to see a massive battle for where do these applications, where do these models live, and how do you access them? How do you integrate with them? And inevitably, how do you pay for them?
100%. And basically, like with Google, they released like a kind of white paper where they were, well, actually, it wasn't a white paper, it was an internal memo where they were saying they didn't really have any actual competitive advantage in this whole space. And then the whole strategy they've got is to try and integrate AI and make it as easy as possible so it integrates into workflows. Because the whole point is you want to be able to like take what's in Bard, put it into an email, put it into a Google Doc, like have everything flowing in an easy way possible. And whoever's got the most of your data sitting there, they can give you the best possible recommendations. So 100%, OneDrive want to do this. They want to have all your documents. They can customize things your way. Google want that for Google Drive in that way. So I think that's totally going to happen. And to be honest, I think it's just going to fragment. Like people are going to have their Microsoft or their Google, depending on whether they're running on apps or on 365. But then for video or for audio or for images, there'll be choices of different ecosystems essentially. And I think that's where it's going to evolve. Whoever adds the most utility makes it the easiest possible. And once you get used to that, you're just really not going to probably switch.
Yeah, the way I see it is that you're going to see this, the kind of race to be the sort of the app store for everybody. But the key is going to be is a lot of these are very technical. And we've looked at these like Nvidia, Microsoft, Azure, and that's great for enterprise. They're throwing lots of money at it and developers, and they're becoming more and more expensive over time. But the real value is going to be is how can you have an issue or workflow or solution that you need, objective, and then you understand where to go to actually find a solution or model, and then an application over the top of that that enables you to build a solution. Or we'll talk about agents as well, and also GPT's evolved. Or you have an agent that understands what you're trying to do, and that can then go off and then talk to these different app stores and find the best solution for you that it can implement itself and write the code. And that's going to be the secret to it. That's where you're going to see this stuff really take off.
No, that makes sense. And you showed quite an interesting study, isn't it? Like where it was showing what most people are using AI for and how it makes their work better, isn't it? Right.
Yeah, there's a study on The Verge, which I've got in front of me here. So it wasn't a massive sample, about 2,000 people in the US, but it's quite interesting seeing that what people are using AI for. So that photos, 37%, music, which is not really business related, depending on what you do, 31%, videos, designs, stories, they're all about 30%. Answering a question. So this is kind of where it starts to compete with search, kind of 70%. Blog posts, 20%. That seems low to me, given what I know about people writing blogs. Coding 18%, and we're going to see that grow. Artwork again, still about 27. Emails 25. I think you're going to see emails increase quite a lot once that's built into things like Duet and Google and Copilot in Microsoft. Brainstorming 54%, and I think AI is amazing for that. I mean, ChatGPT is a fantastic tool for brainstorming. So 54%, I think, is quite low given its capability. And data analysis 26%. And I think that's again going to be a feature of, I think in the US, depending where you are, and you might have access to things like code interpreter, but data analysis is going to be huge as that's rolled out. You've got lyrics. But what's again interesting is another sort of another chart here, which is how people think AI has improved or worsened their work output. And generally, whether it's artwork, emails, coding, music, stories, articles and blogs, lyrics, essays, you're over 50%. If it's artwork, you're kind of nudging 60%, coding again, and emails again. So everyone is seeing an improvement of their work output of at least 50%.
That's amazing, isn't it? Like that's just that's it's incredible that like even with a small sample size, the numbers are still that high.
And that brings me on to let's talk about the because there's about quite a bit to get through here on the Emad Mostique. It was an interview he did with a chap. What was the chap's
The
name?
Amandis, like it was at Abundance
Amandus, that's it.
360. Yeah.
And he's very interesting, just the way he delivers it, isn't it? The way he sort of talks about it's quite matter quite matter of factly about how he wants to change the world. And just to give you some context, so they kind of built. If you go to their website, I've been playing, but actually, it's a stable diffusion model, which is what a lot of people use to generate text to images. Um, and they've got various models there you can go and play with, and it's all free. And he's very focused on open source. So he made a few really interesting points. So I made some notes. So one is the fact that he wants to build well, initially he thinks, and this is generally being correct in technology up to now, to have some very, very sort of clever AGI, but he's saying that generalized models are never going to be as good as specialized models. So the point is that he looks at building models for individuals, organizations, governments or countries as a whole. So we talk to people like some countries in Africa about building a model for that country. So almost absorbing all the information and data, yeah, that the government's got, and providing a model where they can access all the information in very intelligent ways. And he was saying that you have Chat GPT on your phone, but within a year, not connected to the internet, so it's always with you wherever you are. Uh, and they made a really good point, I think, which is you said intelligence is compression almost. So think about when you're trying to, like you're trying to read a book, and I don't know if you've used like Blinkist, for example, where they'll do a summary of the book, or ChatGPT. I use it to summarize a YouTube video or some text you want to read. He's saying that intelligence really is exactly that: it's compression. It's being able to look at a body of data or information and take away the key points generally, or the key points that are specifically relevant to you, and that's what they're trying to do.
No, no, I agree. And there were so many points within this presentation where he was talking about like Peter was asking him, "Can you see past 5 years?" And he's like, "No, I cannot see past 5 years." And he was talking about like how in 5 years there won't be any developers, and the amount of code that's being developed by AI right now is enormous. I think four of the top apps in the App Store were using Stable Diffusion, and there was just so many elements within his presentation, which is just like, yeah, it's gonna I think if countries like India, for example, have access to their own AI, which is culturally relevant and is able to kind of output in the ways that you want it, you're totally going to pick your specialized versions versus these kind of like general versions. Totally.
Well, he was saying that stable diffusion, which is their diffusion model, which is sort of text to images, is increased in speed by 100x since August last year. And he thinks eventually they're going to compress these models down to about 100 megabytes. Is it megabyte? Yeah, megabytes, not gigabyte. 100 megabytes. So you can have this anywhere. You can be on your phone, you can have it on your watch. So
Even yeah, even now you can have it on a laptop, like because it's down to a few gigs already, like without internet, like that can be anywhere.
and what he was saying is, and he makes these big bold points, but he was saying that and this is his game, but he's saying this is the biggest change in society ever. Um, for example, this one blows my mind a little bit. He was saying that they're building the ability to write an entire book from a prompt. Now, I guess you need a lot of information and background and research, and probably provide it with the structure and paragraphs and chapters, what you want it to look like, broadly speaking, a kind of an outline, a kind of skeleton. But then you'll be able to write a book. So the ability to produce content, and I was thinking about this yesterday about we talked last week on the pod about hype cycles and where's this all going. But I was I mean on the back of this I wrote an article that's on LinkedIn. We'll come on to about scaling humans, because what Emma says is that what this technology allows you to do is scale humans, scale yourself. You become massively more productive, massively more efficient. You can absorb more information, use more information, access to sort of more or less infinite intelligence, because the platforms they scale up as well. He's saying that is going to absolutely change the world. And the point he made that resonated with me, which made me write the article, was that he said there is nothing more important in business, in your business, than this. And by that he means AI.
No, totally. And I think like from leading on from that prompt where you said like writing a whole book from one prompt or loading in the first book and asking it to write you the sequel, for example, like that was another example that was kind of like given it in those areas. I think we're gonna shift into into a different form of media. basically from like social media, it'll go into like more personalized media. Because like if you can have a book written from a single prompt or anything, the question is like if you're into a particular type of genre or a particular type of interest, you can have content completely personalized for you, and it can be generated for an audience of one, and that's completely possible now. And I think this completely changes like mass media and mass.
But what's your just on that then? So if you think about social media, yeah, and you can get and wrap. I mean, I was looking, a few videos about the, that submersible that sadly was disappeared, and suddenly my whole flipping timeline's full of things about submarines and God knows what. So getting in social media, getting these rabbit holes, whereas with AI, this rabbit hole could be much deeper, much broader, and you never surface from it.
Yeah, so that's where it's going to get a bit crazy, because the thing is that you go deeper into that area and then you only see in detail articles which filter to your worldview. And then when you add on top of that personal AIs, where people are then talking with like an AI which completely understands them, and potentially like these kind of like relationships and bonding, I think it's going to become quite difficult, and it's going to start getting a bit different, really, because some people are going to start disconnecting from society and going more and more into this digital world. But I mean, the thing is, the implications are that kind of you have to be more personalized in any form of media that you're doing with to engage customers. Like it's not about going down that full rabbit hole, but it just shows how things are going to shift, because everything is fragmenting. Like you showed from that statistics, people are using these LLMs for search. So Google top 10 blue links are not going to be there anymore. Everything is just shifting, and I think the key thing is like, how can you build using some AI into customize and personalize some form of your customer experience, because that's the way everything's going these days.
And what Eggman was saying was that, what was he saying, that what will not be the same ever again in your sector, it will never be the same again once you can scale humans. And I find that whole concept of scaling your human fascinating, because, I always come back to this triangle, don't I, which I did in the article. If you want to read it, it's on LinkedIn. And these triangles, you sort of filling up with, the first revolution, the second, third, now we're at the fourth. And we as humans have to move up to the top. But inevitably, as that triangle's filled up and you're scaling humans, so one human can do more with less, there's a point through the ages, different industrial revolutions, where we always found more work because there was more demand, and there was more mass production, there was more people with money in the consumer revolution, and then the internet as well. That's kind of changed things. But in this AI revolution, we don't quite know when or how far out. I think what he's saying as well, and it's my view as well, is that you are going to, at some point, going to need fewer humans. And this is not really about in the short term or even medium term about getting rid of people. It's about maximize the potential of the people you've got. And I think that's actually really exciting.
100%. Like, I mean, from different conversations we've been having, like, if you can take away kind of like the drudgery of some different tasks, and you can help people be more creative and connect more with other people, I mean, that's what it comes down to, basically. Like, there's so many kind of like non-value added activities that we have to do to just kind of get work done behind the scenes. And if these AIs can help support that cognitive labor, it's just going to be fantastic.
And he was saying that you're seeing now these sort of context windows. So when you write a prompt, it's how much context can you give an AI? And it was, it's now up to about 20,000 words. So what he was saying was that if you've got an AI, he's an example at Workday, for example, and you can upload all the context of what that, this is SaaS or an AI, what that SaaS is trying to do, what
It's for
information
HR.
it uses, yeah, code, HR policies, case studies, everything. You can upload it in one prompt and then just start asking the questions. So he was saying, and this is another article I wrote a while ago on LinkedIn as well, was about, he's saying that these SaaS companies are going to have to work a lot harder to add more value. And I was looking on, before we were doing this, I was going through a lot of, I always end up playing with different SaaS tools, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of them. And I can't always work out how much value they're actually adding and how many times you can pay someone, $20 a month.
It's gonna shift, and I think that's why all the big companies are like pushing AI into their systems. But 100%, like, I think it's going to evolve into a very interesting time place. That's why we talk with so many people. It's like you really want to get to foundational models in your company, and then figure out how to have a database which everyone can access, and how you can generate your own things, because that's the way everything's going to go over time.
And this is the interesting point, isn't it? Is that with AI, which is slightly different, and I talk about this kind of kind of bell curve of software as a service in many ways, where they're always going in the middle because that's the biggest market. And Emad backs this up as well. Is that you know AI? You can use this technology where you have to create some what we call sort of micro SaaS, micro apps, automating your workflows, but it's specific to your business. So what you're doing is you're optimizing and enhancing your specific business or even your personal life, as opposed to what the average customer might want from a large tech company, and that's a game changer.
No, the ability to like fine tune, personalize, customize is just enormous. And like and just like you said, if you got that context window which is that big, and you can literally do that, how many SaaS softwares can you customize that easily by just loading in your own personal data? You just can't, basically, isn't it?
Well, they're all trying now. I mean, I've been playing around with. I was looking for sort of AI of the week, but I was playing with Stable Diffusion, the sort of the imagery, but also in Adobe Firefly, which is just fascinating actually. So I've used Photoshop, the beta version, and Premiere Pro, which is sort of the video editing, and those bigger companies, I have to say, they have built in some really powerful additions using AI. Now, where that's going to go, we don't quite know yet. But you are seeing all the big companies, from Salesforce to Microsoft, Google to a lot of the SaaS companies now. It's like putting .com after your company name, isn't it? In the late sort of 90s, everything's kind of AI. But the real benefit is going to be is automating your business the way you want it to operate. And I think that's going to be the key to it. I find the most frustrating thing with SaaS is that it's always kind of half baked. It doesn't quite do what you want it to do. And to get it to what you want it to do is actually quite difficult. And that's kind of pointless. And that's what implement AI is what we're trying to do, isn't it?
No, no, I agree, and I say like the more I look at like the platforms and models out there, like we had a meeting with Nvidia recently, and like the systems and platforms that they've got ready, and models as a service, and the power of those models, like whether it's an intelligent virtual assistant or it's a very complex protein folding model, like these are just available for different people to kind of just build on. So I totally agree with you. Like when you have that kind of raw power possible, and you can customize it within your company, you've got all the opportunities possible, really.
Just on Nvidia, then we might announce that this week, but we're just announced with coming Nvidia becoming one of their partners, which is quite exciting, fascinating infrastructure they're developing there. So let's move on to something I find quite interesting as well. Is which you kind of touched upon, which is kind of comparing it to social media, is AI externalities, right? So what's an externality? So a good example would be, it might be cigarette smoking when they're in fashion in sort of in the sort of 1900s, or oil's a great example. Dig it out of the ground, you burn it, you use it, and no one ever saw there was a cost, a long-term cost, but clearly there was. There's a health cost, or there's a cost to the environment, and they're the externalities. And the question, at one extreme, people might think one externality of AI is, it's the end of the human race, which I don't believe. I think that's nonsense. But what do you think the AI externalities are going to be? And you've touched on one there, which is like social media, is that these are not rabbit holes anymore. These are like enormous caves that you just clamber into and never return from.
Then you put your Apple glasses on,
Yeah,
you never come
exactly.
out again, basically. No, I really think that like one of the good things about like these language models is I thought they introduced nuance. Like, so for example, when you ask it to like debate two extreme points of view, it gives you a balanced viewpoint. So that was one thing that I liked about it. But having seen the ability for these language models to be able to like create like any kind of content, any kind of article, any kind of book, just based on your unique interests, you're going to find people are just going to go deeper and deeper into that and almost become kind of more disconnected. So I do definitely think that you're going to get people where they almost like are talking to these personal AIs or the AIs, and then they're just getting validated of their views, but the views are unfortunately becoming more disconnected from reality. I think there's going to be some.
I mean, but what about how do you price it then? So in carbon, for example, you got carbon credits, and in other externalities aren't particularly good for society as a whole, or the environment, they get taxed. So the point is with AI externalities, things like that. I mean, and also, what about in business as well? Is it going to be the same, or is it a bit more sort of ruthless and about really optimizing a P&L? What's your view on that in terms of how you actually deal with it?
I think what's going to happen in the future is like the companies potentially that using AI and they've got a lower let's call it like payroll tax bill, essentially, that there will suddenly become an AI tax at some point, right? Like based on your um, based on your productivity, that's going to come in at some point. Um, but it's going to take a while. Like they're already looking at these universal credits and things like this, like in the meantime. So
Yeah, if you fast forward that, if AI, eventually robotics are making everything, you're right. In terms of generating or having a fiscal policy and generating tax income to the government so they can be redistributed in services or universal basic income UBI, whatever it might be. I think it, I think that's something that needs to be thought about. But in business, I don't. The externality, in a way, is going to be crushing your competition. I mean, it's different when it's a person. You disappear down some rabbit hole. But I think in business, the people that understand the opportunity and begin to embrace it now, the externality is going to be a rapid change in the sort of competitive landscape of any sector.
100%, because like once you change the buying pattern and make it easier, faster, cheaper for someone else to kind of like deal with you, then that's going to become the default mode that everyone's going to expect. And then if other people don't follow that, you win, basically, isn't it? But other people will follow that, and then it'll become more competitive. It's just like market dynamics will just evolve. But whoever starts first is going to have the momentum advantage because they'll just build up more data and build up a better system, which means with more data improve the system further. It's just that flywheel, basically. The quicker you can kick off that.
It's going to be quite interesting, isn't it? Because the past been quite focused on since the big, especially the American titans of industry on trying to avoid monopolies or even oligopolies. So it was kind of in the UK as well, having these organisations or governmental bodies, essentially regulators, that try and stop organisations from having too much market power. What's quite interesting now is you could be a very small company and have enormous market power, or your market power could go from 0 to 100 miles an hour kind of overnight. So the regulators have to try and manage who has market power to the extent it actually is, it is harming consumers. They're going to have a real challenge on their hands.
But look at the Silicon Valley Bank episode. Look at what happened there, right? Like that was like a whole run on the bank, which happened like some months ago. And normally, when a bank run happens, where people try to withdraw money, it's done with physical locations and people can stop it and block it. But this was over the course of a weekend where everybody digitally withdrew their money. So the point is, when these changes happen, they're going to happen with like big vectors of force, and you're going to have companies which, like you said, have hardly any employees but wield a huge amount of power, basically, if everyone's dependent on their algorithm.
Yeah, so I think the externality is going to be, in some cases, the winners take all or most of it, and it's a question of trying to be one of them, isn't it? Let's move on to, so I'll keep this to half an hour, to AI of the week. Now, I've been going through loads of these, right? And the ones I've been focused on this week, I have to say, have been things like Descript or 11 Labs, another one, Play HT. There's quite a few of them. It's about sort of voice cloning. I've been trying to work out which one can get the closest to my voice, because if you can get one you're happy with, that is a really powerful tool. But getting all the kind of the pauses, the breaths, they tend to take my mixed accent out. I've got a bit of Lancashire, bit of Midlands, bit of Southern. It kind of takes it out, so it's like a posh version of me. That's what I've been playing with. But I know what's probably more interesting though is the evolution of the auto GPTs.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came across this week very interesting one. So remember we were talking about like Nokia Snake. So whenever time I'm talking, I'm always saying that like AI now is like this Nokia Snake game. It's like the worst that it's ever going to be, and it's like and despite all the power, it's literally like that. So just think of the game Snake. Auto Engineer, this AI I came across recently. It's incredible. Basically, you can describe the features of the game. So you can like go into ChatGPT and say like, please give me the features of the game Snake on a Nokia, and so that I could put it into like this AI auto engineer, and then it'll give you all the features of that game, and then you put it into the other one, and it will actually generate the code for that program, which is playable, which is insane. It's insane.
So again, though, I mean, I rolled out the first auto GPT thing, but this is still quite. You've got to clone it from GitHub. It's still quite technical, isn't it? It's not something. There's no kind of easy interface for it.
Yes, but the point is the power. I think the point to look at here is the power of stacking two AI systems, basically one to specify, one to execute. And I think that the fact that you can go from a description of a game to a playable version of the game, that's incredible. Someone can just put a user friendly front end on it, and it's there. They even showed a different one where you literally write a book just from like a single prompt essentially. But I think this is where it's getting powerful, where you've got two or three AIs with like complementary skills, but the power of what it can ship just increases in complexity basically. I mean,
And the secret, we touched on this last week, didn't we? The secret is the user interface, where now if it's just going to be multimodal or just text or speech ideally, and you can just talk to your, because essentially whether it's text or speech doesn't matter, because the translation models are very good now. You can talk to your technology, whatever that is, and give it an outcome, an objective, or just explain your intent, and it goes away and produces a solution. I mean, that's just a game changer. And this is what Imad was saying in that interview as well, is that there will be no one coding in 5 years.
No, 100%. I mean, like, just to kind of abstract it down to the simplest way, like, imagine you're just working, and then normally on Slack, you would like Slack, for example, a colleague to kind of do something for you or ask them something. Well, you can just have within Slack, different AI agents which are ready to take your command and just execute it for you. So I think we're in a super exciting time here. It's like everybody's got a really smart executive assistant that's now got coding powers and data analysis and anything and brainstorming potential. And I just think that this seamless back and forth with different agents is just going to unlock a lot more productivity for people.
We'll wrap it up there. So, I mean, the main takeaway this week is it's just scaling humans, right? It's scaling yourself, it's scaling your employees, your team, it's scaling your business, and it's using this access to intelligence to allow people to do a lot more with the same or ideally less over time. So, this is the AI assisted organization podcast with Implement AI. If you haven't signed up to Implement AI, go to implementai.io. Myself and Alok, we're probably going to be, I think we're doing an event in London on Wednesday, aren't we? Which is about 40 people are coming to that. That's going to be fascinating. And we're going to be talking about rolling out AI into most of these SMEs and companies in the finance sector as well, wealth management. So we're looking forward to that. And we'll share the news on NVIDIA and Microsoft when we can. Until same time, same place next week. We'll see you then.
See you then.